invite a panel up onto the stage now, so you can all warmly welcome them as they join us on stage. So, first of all, Anna Engblom, who is Chief Operating Officer and Senior Advisor for Infrastructure at Greater Copenhagen. Thank you. Then Sveinung Oftedal, who is Specialist Director of the Norwegian Ministry of Climate and Environment, and he's also Chair of the IMO, which is the International Maritime Organization, the Intersessional Working Group on Reduction of GHG Emissions from ships. He is already here, please give him a warm welcome. And last but not least, Niels Buus Kristensen, who is co-chair of the Danish Council on Climate Change, and he is also a senior research economist at the Institute of Transport Economics in Norway. There he is. So thank you, everyone. Tommaso, he has his own microphone, but the three of you will have to share 3 microphones, okay? And welcome to all of you, and thank you for taking the time to discuss the importance of Nordic cooperation for global green transport and more. So, I'm just going to set my watch so that we can keep track of time. That is also important. Several of you have already pointed out that time is stressing. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm just going to count down. So, let's start. So, I would like to have a combined introductory round, which includes first comments on the points made by Tommaso. So Niels Buus Kristensen, I'm going to start with you. As an economist, a transport researcher, and the co-chair of the Danish Council on Climate Change, will you contribute with your expertise on transport, climate, and environmental economics? I was just wondering, when you heard Tommaso describing the increase in transport demand, and not a decrease, do you share his points of view there? Is this a problem that you see?
I definitely share his view that it's going to increase, and I think that it's very, very hard, and I think it is unlikely that we're able to change that increase into a significant decrease. So I think that the point of view for the green transition is that we're going to have a lot of transport also in the future. In particular, if you look at it globally, I mean, all the countries with a more or which are not as rich as we are, I am very optimistic that they'll become richer and richer, which is definitely a good thing. And that will accommodate also a significant increase in transport in these countries as well. So at a global scale, I think that we have to face that transport is on the growth path, and that the way that we have to change the climate change or solve the climate change challenge is by technologies that can reduce the CO2 emissions from that.
But you also showed us that even though we have more efficient means of transport, it doesn't really add up because of the increase in our transport demands.
No, but that is definitely going to change. I mean, we have now a EU regulation driven by the Fit for 55, which is definitely going to change the CO2 emissions from road transport. We know that for sure. At least if we succeed with the standards that are set for all road vehicles, that is going to change within the next 20 years to more or less zero emissions. So I think that we'll be on the right path. I think that in the future, at least for Europe, the main challenges will be on the maritime and aviation. And that's going to be a very tough issue because most of that part of the transport still have to rely on liquid fuels, which will involve that I think biofuel is not enough for that. I think that power to X, also called electric fuels, will be the solution for that, and that will require a lot of electricity. So I think that the main challenge, which is also coming back to the Nordic countries, will be that we have to invest in all the green electricity production that we can and integrate it into the grid.
And that's going to cause a couple of other challenges when it comes to the environment. We're going to get back to that because we are going to continue our introductory round. And you mentioned the maritime sector, so you can hand your microphone over to Sveinung on your left-hand side. Sveinung Oftedal, he represents the bureaucratic side of the Norwegian Ministry of Climate and Environment. And he is, as I mentioned, responsible for international negotiations on environmental requirements for the maritime sector. And you're also involved in the Norwegian co-leadership for the Mission Innovations Program Zero Emission Shipping, together with Denmark and the United States. So, Sveinung, reflecting on the growing transport demand and hearing that shipping is one of the sectors that is going to struggle a bit making that transition. In your opinion, who gains and who loses in an expanding transport market? Do you see the same growth within shipping, for instance? And is it possible to have such a growth without accelerating the transition to non-fossil fuels?
Let me start by having three statements. One is stated that quite often that shipping is hard to abate when it comes to emissions.
You don't agree?
No, not at all. Shipping is easy to abate, but it has been hard to prioritize.
So it's all about money.
Hard to prioritize. Second, when it comes to the big volumes of international shipping, that is a result of the economic organization globally, the world trade, how we organize our production and consumption patterns, the big volumes of raw materials feeding into the production system. That is, the big volumes of international transport, and that will follow the economic development globally. But that can go down to zero if we want it to go down to zero.
Do we want that?
We will do it on the global arena. We will do it, so that will come. Of course, we will need a lot of energy. That is the whole challenge we have to have enough sustainable energy into that system. Looking into our region, the European region, and especially the Northern European and Nordic region, it's all about priorities. What we have been done is focusing on modes of transport which we actually do not want to have at the end. So we have been planning for and investing in something we do not want, meaning that shipping should take a larger share of the cargo volumes in the short sea transport, meaning that the logistics and the transport chain should be better planned. So shipping has been suffering that we do not have a proper planning system for shipping, meaning we have it for roads, we have it for rail, but we don't have it for ports and the transport system, which is then requiring that transport can be sustainable globally. So shipping can go down to zero quite quickly if we have the energy and if we have the investments in our region, in Europe, and also globally. We need some time, but by 2050 we'll be net zero.
So what you are saying is that the shipping can actually play a more substantial role in the global transport system turning green than we actually acknowledge.
Absolutely. The point is, when it comes to cargo, the freight transport it can. When it comes to passenger, it's different. Passenger transport is, in our region, shipping plays a role, but not a substantial role. But when it comes to the cargo volume, yes.
Thank you so far. We're going to get back to that as well later on, but I would like to introduce our fourth panelist, Anna Engblom. You are the Chief Operation Officer and also Senior Advisor for Infrastructure at Greater Copenhagen, which is a Danish-Swedish partnership involving 85 municipalities and 4 regions, striving to be, and I quote, the world's most competitive large city region. Now, I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with what you're doing at Greater Copenhagen, so could you just give us a short introduction first, Anna, to how you're working in your region to make transport green and sustainable, first of all?
Yes, thank you. So I'm a senior advisor on infrastructure, not meaning that I'm an expert in infrastructure, like many of you guys. I'm advising our political chairman on infrastructure issues. And right now it's Lars Goldhøj, who's also chairman of the region of Hovedstaden, capital region of Denmark. And well, we are trying to bring both governments in Sweden and Denmark together to talk about initiatives that we want to fall in place. Yesterday we had a new tax agreement between Sweden and Denmark coming into place, which was really great. Thank you, Karen, as well, Secretary General, for making that happen. And now when we have the tax agreements in place, we're working with the transport ministers on infrastructural issues and questions. So I'm meeting with Danish Council tomorrow to talk to him about how we can cooperate better between Sweden and Denmark.
And do you see the problem that Sveinung is pointing out, that the shipping sector could play a larger role, for instance, towards freight transport into a great region like yours, which is quite substantial?
It could definitely. I also have a background in Port of Trelleborg, which is Scandinavia's largest ro-ro port. But what I thought about something that Peter said about value chains, where Denmark is now building and EU is co-financing the Fehmarn Belt tunnel, but Sweden is not getting anything of that co-financing from EU to upgrade their railway system, meaning that when the Fehmarn Belt tunnel is up and running in 2030, 2029, 2030, we will see a 50 to 120% increase in road transport for trucks, the heavy trail road transport across the bridge, the Øresund Bridge. And I thought that was, not to be true when I heard the figure. So the capital region of Denmark, they have just issued another report on the same subject, and they're just confirming what we found 2 years ago, that the trucks will increase by 61% in 8 years then. Or 6 years, sorry, yes.
So, Tommaso, when you listen to this northern specific inputs with your European experience, what are your comments? I mean, as Sveinung said, there's a lot of potential for shipping, which can turn to zero emission nearly no time if we prioritize it. Truck transport is going to increase. That's not what we really want, is it? So how to work on actually making these changes in the transport system, because that's basically what we need now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the 1 million euro, krona, or whatever question, right? But let me start saying that, of course, with infinite amount of money and resources, we will get there in no time. And I agree. I mean, shipping in the end is also from a technological point of view is basically larger trucks. I mean, it's diesel engines, something we know and we have been knowing for years, right? So it can be definitely decarbonized. And the point on road is exactly what we meant when we discuss about managing demand. So transportation demand, the thing is not to necessarily decrease them or bring it to lower level with respect to what we have today, but we need to start asking ourselves what is the best way to move 1 ton of goods. No, I mean, you can do it with trucks on a bridge, and maybe these trucks will be electrified, but then it means that you need a lot of batteries and a lot of energy, and maybe there is a more efficient way to do it with the train or with shipping through the sea. And we need to start thinking a bit more systemic, and this, I think this Nordic situation is unique because it's a big scale, but it's not the European scale, which is even more complex because you have 27 different mindset, and if instead of 3 or 4 or 5, which make things more complicated. So I think we should start. We need to start looking at these things from a system-wide perspective.
But maybe the Nordic region could be, set an example. I know that we have a lot more coastline in total than probably the European continent. But then again, Anna, and please just
I heard what I heard you said now, and also you said just before, is that we're planning for something that we don't want.
Yeah.
So why don't we just plan for what we want instead of quite the opposite? And you also mentioned we're talking about carbon dioxide emissions, but what's really what everybody's talking about in Eastern Denmark is congestion. The congestion won't change with zero-emission trucks, and not the particle emissions and so on.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned congestion as well, because I think we also have to be realistic.
Yeah.
If we look at the numbers and we look at all the effort which has been done during the last 30 or 40 years in order to shift transport, in particular freight transport, away from road, the result has been very, well, is depriving.
Yes.
So
it hasn't really changed.
it hasn't really changed. On the opposite, it has gone the wrong way, looking from the climate perspective.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be realistic. And I have to think that we have to face the truth and see what are the measures which can actually create a significant change on that. And I think I'm not sure I agree with you that shipping can have a significant reduction of the road freight transport CO2 emissions. However, but when you mention congestion, then I think now we're talking, because I think it's very important that we distinguish between urban freight transport and outside urban freight transport, long distance freight transport. Because I think in the long distance freight transport, we have quite a stable or solid or hard to change division of labor between the transport modes, both the rail, the road, and the shipping transport. I think it's very difficult to change. Of course we can, and then we should also improve the shipping sector. I really agree on that, and that could change something. But it will not be able to change the overall picture that road transport will be dominating in the long distance transport. But when it comes to congestion, and that's in and around the big urban areas, and here I fully agree that road transport is of freight transport is a significant challenge, and we also saw that from your externalities, which didn't even include congestion. It was included. Oh, I couldn't see that. The text was too small. So I think that this is where we have, and I think that this is where the digitalization comes in, because we need digitalization for road pricing, and that is the solution to how we can actually reduce freight transport on roads in the urban areas.
Okay, so there's no doubt you don't necessarily agree on how to get to the targets. Simon, you've been patient, and I know you have a lot to comment, but I can't help but thinking all four of you are advising politicians, and policies are probably key to making the systemic changes. So are you not specific enough when you're giving your advice, or what is happening? Simon?
Yeah, I've been in the system for many years, 30 years. And I have to remind you, I have been in this system for this long. This is the global average rise in sea level, the time I have been here, and before I retired, the sea level rise has been this high. Yeah. And we don't take it seriously. So why is this happening? It is because the system. In all our countries, the system is that we have thousands of planning in road investments. And the politicians, they have these plans ready planned all the way, all the time. Money doesn't count, and this is what we plan for. And we reduce the resistance of having transport on roads, as easy as that. And the externalities have never been taken seriously into account. So we have systematically been investing in things we do not want, and we don't care about the money. It's still happening. Now, what we really want, we don't have a system to invest in. Simple as that. So we don't have a system to invest in it. So the point is, I'm not saying that shipping will resolve all problems on freight transport, but it has a much larger opportunities than it has been assumed previously, also when it comes to intra-Nordic and short sea freight transport. So it's a part of the system we have, meaning planning for, and it is also part of how much resistance or do we make into, let's say, the transport we do not want, let's say freight transport on road. If there is little resistance, you will have that transport. If there is more resistance, it will be reduced. So this is in the our region a part of the, the development, and it's still happening. Still happening. And you don't have, for instance, in the port investment, which can then easier have freight transport coming from land to sea, and then having then a short distribution system on land. We don't have, planning for port investments and how to make this more efficient. So it is a part of a system problem we have in our region.
But do you think, and I know that you want to comment, but just to add on, because we should cover the Nordic perspective here, because now you're all representing different countries. Would considering the Nordic level and looking at the region as a whole make it easier to make systemic changes? Can I get some comments on that from all of you, starting with Anna?
Yeah, when we met, or we had this Teams chat before today, I told you that when we had a new transport minister, Minister of Transportation Infrastructure in Sweden, Niels Buus Kristensen, we were hoping that he would be positive for a Nordic Council of Transport Ministers, but it took him about 10 minutes. The rumor says, I didn't talk to him myself, but the rumor says it took him 10 minutes to know that he absolutely didn't want it, because it works just as well to discuss it bilaterally with his Nordic colleagues. And fortunately, his relationship with the Danish Transport Minister, Tommaso Selleri, is really good. But we can't build transportation policies and infrastructural planning on personal chemistry. And in Denmark, they tend to change Minister of Transport like every year. So I think there needs to be a structural form for also for all of us outside the bilateral meetings to be able to
make the discussion
more transparent, so that we know what they're discussing. Can I also just make a small comment about shipping? Shipping is quite, it's not something that you see, and for a politician to make investment in something that you don't see is quite, I don't know, say as attractive as investing in a road that that people in your area will see. You know what I mean? And use. So invest in a road and there is less congestion, or investing in shipping and there is less congestion. Then you need to write a sign next to the road saying that you can now drive freely because we invested in something else.
Well, there's also a discussion whether you should build railroads and highways side by side, so that's definitely visible. Tommaso, I know that you raised your hand earlier.
Yeah, no, I mean, there will be so much to comment on all these things. I mean, starting from this last one, we have data, and there are data showing that every time you build an highway, you reduce congestion for a short period of time, and then congestion increases again. Yeah. So, I mean, I share the pain of talking to politicians about these things, but data are there, and I think that the point that was made before about increasing or decreasing resistance is a very good one, because and this was my example on autonomous vehicles before. No? If you lower the resistance in some domains, this will attract demand, will attract traffic, will attract people will choose that mode because it's more attractive, more convenient. I mean, there is the usual survey that they've done in Copenhagen why people buy it, not because it's environmentally friendly, but because it's cheaper and quicker. And that's the thing. Today, I mean, I don't even have a car, but if I have to drive to the office in Copenhagen, I will not be able to park it anywhere. And that's what shifts the inertia of the system. And coming back to your question about the Nordic cooperation, I mean, for me I'm an outsider, so I have this European perspective, but I think the way I see it is a very nice laboratory, because it's a privileged situation in which you have not so many actors, in which there is money compared to maybe other region, or money are better spent compared to other. I mean, she said they change transport minister every year. In some countries, we change government every year. So I mean, there are different difficulties, but I think it's important to show that some of these solutions can work, because when you see them, it's different than a graph on a the slide.
But are we sufficiently taking into account that different transport modes require different amounts of renewable energy and different energy sources? And are we sufficiently using the qualities of the different transport modes in the right place of the system? I know this is a huge question, and I know Sveinung is probably going to say, no, we're not. How do you say, is there any way that we can use platforms for collaboration better in the Nordic region? Yes.
Now you asked two questions. The first was whether we had a sound division of labor, and I think I hinted at that earlier, and I think, yes, in the broad picture, I think we have a very good division of labor. I mean, shipping is transporting by far the most freight measured in tons and also in ton kilometers. So I think that we have actually quite a lot on shipping, especially internationally. But I think the problem or the challenges you were describing was, again, as I said, the urban challenges. That is where you have the congestion, that is where you have the air pollution and so on. But the main part of the CO2 emissions, also from freight road transport, is not within the urban areas, it's on the long distances. By far the most important part of the CO2 emissions.
So turning that over to rails would probably help that.
Yeah, but the measures that you have to use for that, I mean, history shows that it's very, very difficult. And I think that we can do that, and I think that we should do that. I think that we should put taxes corresponding to the externalities that Tommaso showed us. And I mean, I advise government and everybody that wants to hear about it every day, more or less. So I don't disagree with that. But I just think that we should be aware that this will not solve the CO2 emission problem from transport. I think that what will do that is transformation to green energy. And I think that the second question you asked, where can the Nordic countries actually contribute by cooperation? That is on the energy system side. When we have a lot of green energy, some of it which is very fluctuating, then we need to integrate the energy system. We need a strong grid. We need thick cables across the countries and so on. That is really what we need in the future, where we need a lot of more electricity. And I think that this is something where the sooner the better, because we're going to need that quite a lot, quite fast. And the faster we get that, the faster we can decarbonize the transport system.
So now you've kind of given your final point, because we have to sort of land the discussion. Unfortunately, we could have discussed this for hours, but I'm going to add on to the rest of the panel, Niels. The challenges of the transition are many, but what are the possibilities and opportunities do you see, drawing in the Nordic perspective, but also looking at it systemically? Because everyone keeps talking about we have to build more power lines and transmission grids and so on, and we haven't even talked about energy efficiency or how to sort of integrate things even better. So if we can finish off by seeing how what the possibilities are for better cooperation on green transport in our region. For whom do you see the largest potential? And then I'm not only thinking about authorities and research institutions, but also businesses. And could it be easier for each nation to reach their targets if we cooperate more on the Nordic level? So, Niels, you've already given a reply to that. Sveinung, what do you think?
Definitely it is a role for Nordic cooperation, because the effect of doing things harmonized in the various Nordic countries is much larger if you do things in isolation, meaning I think we have a role which adds on to the EU framework, meaning that we will then need to cooperate better, which we are doing, we are cooperating, and we need energy. However, ship will need less energy than the other modes of transport in order to provide the transport services we can. So shipping can be zero in the Nordics sooner than it can be in Europe, and sooner it can be globally. And the good thing about it is that it is Nordic-based companies which can take the lead, which are providing the solution, and it's Nordic-based ship-owning companies which can then demonstrate that we can do it. So the answer is yes, more and better Nordic cooperation. We need to continue on the route. And second, shipping can deliver and bring sustainable transportation system on freight transport in the Nordics.
Thank you so much. Anna, final remarks from you.
Yeah, we definitely believe that Nordic cooperation is a necessity and that it really works. We see that now with our Nordic ministers in Sweden and Denmark cooperating around the tax agreement, but we also want them to discuss and cooperate around transportation. And I think that we need, in the Nordics, discuss transportation, energy, and tax and sort of financing together as a value chain. Because now we are discussing, do we have enough money for these investments, rather than do we have enough energy for these investments?
And can we afford not to?
Yeah, can we afford not to invest?
Thank you. Tommaso, final words from you.
Yeah,
Looking at the test bed of the Nordic region.
No, I fully support what has been said on energy. I do believe that the transport problem in the future will be an energy problem, most, because all these sustainable alternatives are basically done with electricity, and this has to come from somewhere. So energy is definitely an area in which cooperation is needed. My maybe last reflection is very welcome that this cooperation exists. We should never forget that this is a global problem, most and foremost. So it's important to lead by example, but in the end this will be a challenge that we will have to solve collectively, because either we solve it or we will fail together. I mean, there is no other alternative. And my very last remark, and this is what we try to do when we talk to policymakers, is always to keep in mind that the system is complex and requires solutions that are not trivial. So I always try to advise against picking up one silver bullet was mentioned before. I mean, we need all possible solutions, because the risk otherwise is that we will invest money and resources in something that we will discover in 10 years that is not delivering what we expected. So it's important to have a systemic and comprehensive view on these things, and to shy away from propaganda type of solution, which is a challenge, of course, because
No easy task. So thank you so much, Tommaso Selleri, Anna Engblom, Niels Buus Kristensen, and Sveinung Oftedal, for reflecting together with us on the not small challenge of cooperation in order to solve both our energy and climate and transport challenges. Thank you so much.